Recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know that we have laid out a comprehensive strategy for supporting the people of Taiwan and the capacity of the people to determine their own destiny. But if I were to jot down several of the elements that I think would be part of that, I'm afraid that on almost all of them we're failing, not succeeding. And I say that a bit to get your response. One of the ones that we're succeeding on is the attitude of the people of Taiwan themselves. That's not due to anything we've done, I don't imagine, but instead due to the fact that the Chinese have been brutal against the Uyghurs and against the people of Hong Kong, and of course the people of Tibet, and that has concentrated the thinking of the people of Taiwan. So we've been successful there, but other elements, it strikes me that we're not being successful. So one element of our strategy would surely be to make sure that world opinion is watching this and is concerned about what China's doing and wants to see Taiwan have its capacity for self-rule. And yet, as has already been mentioned, we're seeing greater and greater diplomatic isolation of Taiwan by nations around the world. A second element or third element would be if you will, the military porcupining, if you will, the capacity of Taiwan to make decisions to make itself a very difficult target, and to make sure that the Chinese aggressors would recognize that the cost of invasion would be severe indeed. And on that one, I know this is not a classified session, so we can't go into that in depth, but I don't come away thinking that that's become as much stronger as we would have liked it to become. The next would be a communication of severe economic consequence were there to be an incursion against Taiwan. And while we talk about that, I don't know that we've communicated to the Chinese or collaborated with our friends around the world a decision of just what we would do to inform China in advance of what we, the collective nations of the world, would do were they to take aggressive action against Taiwan. And the final element of our strategy might be our commitment to the region and communicating our commitment to the region. And the decision made by the prior administration and not yet reversed by this one to back out of the TPP does not communicate commitment to the region. There's some things we do that obviously are able to so commit, but that decision was not. There was a discussion made that we don't like multilateral trade agreements, we like bilateral agreements, but we didn't enter into bilateral agreements. So we're just sort of we disappeared. There would be opportunities, for instance, with the ASEAN nations to enter into a digital trade agreement and to begin the process again. But I'm concerned that if I were China looking at this, I'd say this is getting easier, not harder. Am I misreading that? And I don't mean to be blaming just this administration. I'm looking back over the last several years of American policy, but it strikes me that on almost every dimension of an effective strategy, we're not winning, we're losing.
Senator,
Ambassador, please, yeah.
Senator, thank you very much for your comments and your question. Senator, none of us underestimate the scope of the challenge, but I would argue that there are also reasons for optimism. In terms of world opinion and the interest of our partners around the world, I think it's quite significant that for the first time in many instances, or the first time in a long time, many of our allies and partners have spoken up together with us in joint statements and other venues to express publicly their concern for the situation in Taiwan and the national interest that they see in peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. And I'm thinking about the statements made publicly by Japanese leaders, our South Korean allies, by the G7, just last week by the Secretary General of the EU External Action Service and the like. So I think there are an increasing number of partners and allies around the world who recognize the importance of peace and stability across the Strait, and they're publicly stating that fact. In terms of our military deterrence strategy, I'll let Assistant Secretary Ratner reply to that in more detail, but what you've outlined, Senator, precisely is our strategy, assisting Taiwan to develop an asymmetric every day. Certainly the economic consequences of any conflict across the Strait would be severe, and I think that we are making that clear, and it's up to us every day to, I think, demonstrate that. And as Secretary Blinken has said recently, this would be a serious mistake if China were to ever take that step with very serious consequences. And in terms of our commitment to the region, Senator, I would say it's what animates our actions every day. I know from my most recent travels to the region over the last month and the engagement of our leadership from the President, the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense on down, we demonstrate on a daily basis our ironclad commitment to the security of our treaty allies, our strong commitment to peace and security and prosperity across the Indo-Pacific region, and that's what animates our actions every day. Let me stop there, sir.
Dr. Ratner, thank you.
Yeah, Senator Romney, thank you. I would offer a more optimistic view of at least the trajectory of where we're headed on some of the issues that you raised. I share your concerns about the military challenge. China's military modernization is certainly stressing stability across the strait, but we have seen, particularly under the leadership of President Tsai, we have seen Taiwan taking incredibly important steps on trying to modernize and reform its own military. We have seen them increasing their defense budget. We have seen them increasingly focused on asymmetric capabilities and the kinds of capabilities that we think will strengthen deterrence, and we've seen them starting to walk down the road of making some fairly significant reforms, reserve reforms, and in other areas that are going to enable them to defend themselves. At the same time, at the Department of Defense, we are increasingly focused on this challenge. Secretary Austin has articulated China as the top-pacing challenge, and we're in the process of updating capabilities, expediting experimentation and prototyping, developing new operational concepts, and updating our posture in the region to be better prepared to deter aggression in this area. And as it relates to allies and partners, I think we are seeing increasing concern and increasing action, including on the security side. We had our very first ever combined, meaning with another country, Taiwan Strait transit within the last couple months. That was with Canada. We have held major military exercises with partners from inside and outside of the region, including multi-carrier operations with aircraft carriers from the UK, large deck amphibs from Japan, a number of countries participating. We've seen countries in the region starting to do their own Taiwan Strait transits. And so I think we are seeing countries stepping up their military presence in the region and their willingness to support deterrence in a way that we haven't before. So collectively, I agree with you, it's an enormous challenge, but I think the urgency is there, and we've got the right formula, and we're moving as fast as we can.
Senator Shaheen's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you both for